Hey everyone, Leanne Bridges here, and I'm really excited to have a new person to interview. It's Laura Louise Persichetti, and she's a registered psychotherapist and traveler abroad. She's done so many things at a very young, I would say a very young age. You've done so much and accomplished so much. It's so inspiring to hear your story and the work that you're doing in the world. So welcome, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and I'm excited for our conversation.
Awesome, great. Maybe we can start with you. If you could just do a quick introduction of yourself and some of the work that you did, and then maybe we can talk about your book and your program and your academy and so forth.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a registered psychotherapist and I have a little bit of a different view with psychotherapy in the sense that I really believe that we need to look at energy in order to look at therapy, meaning our thoughts are, are energy, our words are energy, everything we do is energy, our emotions are energy. So not looking at energy, I think, is a big missing piece to therapy. So I've studied a lot of different practices, ancient tools and practices that have been said to help humanity for thousands of years, focusing on the energy piece. And of course, I've studied modern psychology and to be able to learn from both of these worlds and figure out where is there a bridge that we can start to put them together to really support our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health. So I've done my own personal study around that, but I've started Royal Arts Healing Academy, which offers a variety of different services that are support people both online and in person, combining um, you know, traditional therapeutic practices, and then also exposing people to learn more about their own energy and how they can empower themselves to take care of their energy. And that, in short, supports the mental, emotional, physical health as well. So yeah, that's essentially what I'm focusing on now. I know you've mentioned the travel and I'm an author, so lots of different pieces, but it's really at the end of the day, finding tools that have helped me and finding ways to share it with other people.
That's awesome. And so, how does the academy work? Is it you, or are there other people? You bring other practitioners in?
Yeah, so I'm the founder, but I have some people that I'm working with as a team, offering some different services. So that's been really cool because it's like, okay, I started this thing and now moving into a space of working with people who align and resonate with those, um, that mission to be able to help people and then being able to support them and their services. So it's kind of at the beginning stages of growing out with other practitioners, but it's starting to get to that. So it's very exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. I really love, the fact that you're bringing the spirituality together with the psychotherapy. I find that a lot of clients that I see, and my partner who I do a lot of work with, who's has a psychology background but is a naturopath, is that they're missing that energy spirit piece. They've done the counseling and psychology counseling or therapy work, and they can do it for years, but they don't, it helps them a lot, but and they've learned some of the tools to look inward, but they're really missing that very important piece, which to me leads to, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I here to learn? How, in learning those things, can I serve the world and serve myself and so forth? Is that kind of aligned with some of the thinking you have and some of the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly it with those types of deeper questions like who am I? What am I here for? What's life really all about? What's my purpose and how do I get more in alignment with that for sure? I feel like um, what I'm talking about is a bit controversial in the therapy world, you could say, because
Of course.
talk therapy has a place and it's very helpful, but you have to remember when you're talking about something, you're generating a lot of energy around that thing.
Exactly.
And then what?
Hmm. Yes.
What can you do? Like, what can you do with that? You just talk about it and then you don't actually transmute it. You don't actually shift it. And it's an inside job. You're not going to be able to go outside of yourself to figure that out. And a lot of times people will go to therapy as a stepping stone, but it will lead them to certain practices that lead them hopefully deeper towards within themselves to be able to get those answers.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's not a lost path in the sense of like if you're just meandering trying to figure it all out, there are structures and and ancient paths that can help
Mm,
not answer those questions for you, but show you where to look, and
yeah,
essentially looking within yourself.
that's great. And it's so interesting because psychology was a really avant-garde field of study, a few decades ago. People thought it was too weird. It wasn't rooted as much in science, all that. Maybe it was the 60s, 70s. I don't remember exactly, but I remember that time. Like, and so now it's like the field of psychology is looking at when people that are going out beyond that and saying the same thing. And it's so how funny how we evolve in humanity, but we always have to hold back to what we know, right? And protect it before we can really push through. And it's pioneers like you that do that, but you're taking risks too, right?
Yeah. It's so true, isn't it? Like, it's like when you think about where it came from, like you wouldn't have a career right now if those, people weren't kind of pushing through those boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of references of people who have like really powerful quotes or philosophies. It's a lot based on philosophy, the beginning of psychology. We reference those leaders now, but those leaders usually were studying, ancient paths. They're initiates, certain lineages to be able to help them, be asking those questions and being those the answers that they were getting to be able to help people.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's fascinating.
we forget
It's
that.
we're always resisting the next thing in evolution.
Yeah, exactly. So, can you give me like kind of an example or something that's happened where you've been able to help somebody both on like just so people can really see what you're talking about? Because I think you and I kind of get the idea of energy and psychotherapy, but not everyone has experienced it. So, if you could maybe just kind of give that a little bit more texture or context for people, what that would be like.
I think it's a great question because it's not about replacing something.
Hmm.
Like for example, I happen to work with a lot of cancer patients. So there's the science aspect where you want to be able to do medical treatment. Go for chemo or look at nutrition, look at all these different pieces for the physical. And that is a world that's not going to be replaced, but it can be accompanied with energy. Like
Hmm.
for example, and Sophic Reiki is the original Reiki from Japan, and that has been so helpful with people who have been experiencing their cancer treatments and being able to get to the other side of it. But I also think it's a mindset. I'll never forget, I had at one point two clients come in. They're both diagnosed with very similar diagnoses of cancer. And I just had a real conversation with both of them. I mean, like, got this diagnosis. What do you want to do? Like, do you want to go on a healing journey or what are your thoughts? And I remember the one client sharing, I've had a really great life. I've accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. I love my family, but I really feel like I'm good. And then the other client was like, oh, absolutely. I want to heal. I want to do everything in my power. I'm not done here. And that mindset, it was the same. I was using the same energy tools and they're helpful even if you're choosing to cross over, they're going to help you with that process. But if you're choosing to heal, you can utilize that energy in that direction too. And the one peacefully died with his family, and the other one's in remission and living life. So the energy doesn't replace the science. Both of them were exploring treatments. Both of them were exploring other avenues to be able to navigate within their medical field with their doctors. So I think sometimes with energy work, people are like, oh, you have to just do energy work and chemo is terrible and all this stuff. It's like, hang on a second, it's not one or the other. It's recognizing that you have a variety of tools, and which tools are you choosing and which tools do you need in this moment. And that, placing science with energy is not the way, and saying that energy has no place in science, that's not the way either. It's
Mm,
really, I really truly believe it's going to be when we bridge everything, it will radically change our medical system. And it will change within us too when we utilize both of those types of tools. When we address the physical and we address the energy, it's going to be a whole other level of humanity, like
mm,
significantly. That's what I truly believe, and that's what I see within my own life, like I'm the first example. But within people that I work with or work alongside with, it's consistent.
mhm. And do you see, like, again, as you're kind of integrating the psychotherapy with the spiritual, and you talk about the integration of medical with the energy work, is there kind of like the middle ground, which is where the emotion lies? Where, like, so when you talk about cancer as an example, you can work on the physical, you can work on the energy, but it's also the thoughts and the emotions that the core that could be like, I believe very much when my husband died of cancer, it was very much rooted in emotions. And he died of mesothelioma, which relates to the lining of the lungs and the heart and so forth. And so that's one of the things that we talk around a bit, but a lot of people don't really. Maybe they're afraid to talk about it, but it's at the core. What is it that the disease that's eating you? And I would imagine psychotherapy would help with some of that. Is that correct, or is that not the area?
Yeah, I think, I mean, psychotherapy, I think, helps people have a space to be able to talk about what they're experiencing, their thoughts and emotions, be able to talk about how they're processing, having somebody to just fully listen to that's not emotionally involved, I think is also helpful. Um, but I think any disease, any illness, not just cancer, there are roots to it. And often it's connected to, stored emotion or unexpressed emotion or things that we haven't fully dealt with. You can only bury something for so long before it becomes an issue that you have to look at. So I often think of when you're diagnosed with a disease or you're working through some health issue, it's a gift. It's a gift to be able to go deeper within yourself and to give yourself that time and space to do that
Mm.
instead of just go, 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 go. And unfortunately, when we're on that treadmill of going, our body has to get our attention in some way or to be able to go deeper within the self. So, I mean, we speak the same language in the sense of, like looking deeper into the emotions and how can you heal that aspect while you're addressing all these other pieces. It's very multi-layered because we are multi-layered.
Exactly, exactly. And it's interesting because the world around us, when we look at the media and governments and stuff, especially over the last 3 years, have been really pushing our attention towards, no, you get a quick fix. This is something outside of you, and you fear getting anything. And just all with COVID, like, how much, who talked about losing weight, getting exercise, being out in the sun, doing all that, and working on our emotions, even our collective emotions. It would, like you said, that you were censored, right? So it's like this whole, it seems very, sometimes very challenging to get that message out and to help people with that. Do you find that at all, or do you find your way through the whole process pretty easy?
I think with everything that you're saying, it's so important to become aware of how emotions play a part. You know, to when fear's driving you,
Mm,
what kind of choices do you make
yeah.
versus when joy or love is driving you
Mhm.
versus when you're just centered and you're not allowing any emotion drive you. You're just, um, that's something you have to navigate as an individual. And I think the more people that are navigating that as an individual and finding balance, we'll start to see changes in our society and in our culture.
Mm,
But we often look at culture and see this chaotic disaster and this needs to change and that needs to change. And it's like, we can't change it all at once.
mhm,
But what can we do here and now? What can we do with ourselves, within our family, within our home? Do we want to create an environment that's based on fear? Or do we want to create an environment that's based on love?
mm,
And yes, get in different information and be able to make a choice that suits what you feel is best for that moment.
mhm.
So COVID, I think it's generated so much fear. And really, when you think about it, I think has been like a huge trauma that nobody's really talking about.
Yeah.
Like to be locked in your home, not being able to go anywhere. The other day I was thinking about how I remember um, people would, kind of have a representative that would go out into the stores. And then when they came back, like spray themselves down or change their clothes, not bring those clothes into the house. Like there was so much levels of fear
Yeah.
around around COVID, and you kind of forget that that was like a moment of time where people were like, you're fearing people that you loved. Like think about that. The people you love most, you're like
Yeah.
boundary,
Yeah.
boundary up. Like what has that done to us psychologically?
Mm.
And we might not it will be interesting to watch that generation grow up, and the
Mhm.
level of anxiety that is existing is extremely high. I had a
And
lot
the
of clients.
divisiveness too, right? That occurred as a result too. If you had different perspectives on things, it was very,
Separation.
yeah.
That's like one of
And
the
shame and guilt a lot was like that, those motions of fear started, then there was like shame and guilt and all these different things in a collective. It was so interesting when we can step back and look at it. I think you're right. And trauma, all of us have trauma throughout our life or parts of our life, and they often are what really helps when we can look at the trauma, helps us to understand the things that we do today and our patterning and so forth, and where we need to heal. And when we step up a bit and look at the collective trauma, you know, for history, we've had all that fear, shame, all that control, everything, disease, whatever. But it would just happen in such a short, intense period of time. It's like this kind of microcosm to look at what's happened to our planet for many, many, many years, right? And to learn from it.
Yeah, and I'd like to hope that it was something that, even though it looked like a mess, that it was a way to transmute everything.
Hmm.
And I say that because it's like on a personal journey of healing, sometimes when it's like the most challenging, the most difficult, everything's all over the place. It's usually all that stuff needs to come up in order to transmute it, to heal it. And then you get to the other side of it, and that's when you're like, like,
Yeah.
you're in a better place. You finally reach a new level of peace or joy or love and healing. And it's like as a collective, we just went through this huge tornado, and in some ways we're still in it, but what will be the other side of that? We get to choose what we want to do with this experience. And I think we can
Yeah.
come, we had to maybe spread out and separate, and
Yeah.
hopefully that extreme will bring us together again.
Yeah. And in some ways, and also is that like anything, any trauma, we can rise above it and learn from it and grow and strengthen, or it can go right down and it can completely envelop us. And so we always have that choice. And I think that's my sense is that's what's playing out of the collective as well. There's going to be that collective of going down and the collective of going up as well,
Hmm.
creating new things. It's really
Fascinating
fascinating.
time to be on Earth, that's for
I
sure.
think so. Yeah, exactly. So you start a lot, like your book is discovering you through discovering the world. Is that, did I say it right?
Yeah, discover you, discovering the world.
Yeah, discover you, discovering the world. And it's fascinating because you use the metaphor of and the real aspect of travel and the elements of travel of all the kind of key lessons in life, with the idea that you're discovering yourself as you discover the world, or as you discover the world, you're discovering yourself. I think it works both ways. And each of the chapters, like luggage, of course, talk about an experience that you've had traveling with luggage, but then it relates back to how we carry this luggage. We carry all this stuff around. And I was thinking about a client that I had recently, and she was always concerned about, there's about 5 people in her life that she's trying to help and rescue, and she's going through grieving. And I felt like this luggage that, like, if she could just free herself and think about herself for a bit and help herself, how she could help them better. But the metaphor of luggage just goes on and on and on, but every chapter, it kind of describes that way. So maybe if you could just describe a little bit about your book and how it came about, and what's the key message, if you don't mind, or if I captured some of it, maybe you can explain it a little bit better than I did.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed the fact that there's stories about traveling, but there's also this underlying metaphor that's happening through the whole book. And so it's a combination of travel stories and life lessons. And um, it was birthed during a time where there was a lot of youth suicides in my home community. And I was very involved. I was working at a children's mental health agency. I was involved with the children's program and the bereavement program at the local hospice. I was doing suicide prevention and safe talk. I was on the suicide prevention committee. Like, I was just really involved in that world. And I had my own clientele, and I was helping those people with these tools, but I was like recognizing that that wasn't that wasn't enough for me. It was just getting to that handful of people. It was like, what, there's got to be a way that I can get this out to more people. And I had a friend challenge me, and he said, what was my biggest dream? And I was like, oh, I just always thought of myself as like, sitting by a lake and writing books. And he was like, well, why aren't you doing that now? And I was like, oh, I mean, I don't know. I just don't have the time. He's like, no, I think you should write a book. And then he started pushing the fact that like, you help these people, but you could help more people with the book. Why wouldn't you do that? And it was just like this, that voice in your life that just has to push you to the edge a little bit. And I was like, okay, I'll write a book. He's like, okay, do it by the end of the month.
Mhm.
And it was November and we were already halfway through the month. And I was like, well, okay. So I sat down and I was so clear with my why. There was so many youth suicides that I was just like, if this could help one person, if this helped one person, it was worth writing. And I'll never forget, it was not the beautiful pictures sitting by the lake. I was literally in between different stages of my life. I had boxes in this room that I was in. I was working multiple jobs, and like I would literally just go on my computer, surrounded by chaos, and just write this book. And I finished it in 2 weeks, and I thought, great, done. And realized like, no, that's like not done at all. If you ever have gone through the process of writing a book, it's like, yeah, that's like not even, that's
Yep.
like just skimming the surface.
Yes.
Um, having to go through the editing process and formatting and designing and, where to put it, like all of that stuff. It was all steps, but
Yes.
um, it really came from a place of wanting to help people through a different medium.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's interesting because that was 10 years ago. And it's kind of resurfaced because I've created an online course that goes with that book.
Okay.
And so it's literally 10 years, and the course, each module aligns to a chapter. And I'm working with a mastermind group right now where each week we cover some of the material of the module and in the chapter. But it's this strange cycle of like, it was 10 years ago when I wrote that book, 10 years ago when I brought the first, mastermind group of people together through it. And now it's like all these different projects coming together to go through the process again. So
That
it's
is
fun and it's
Do you
great to be
believe in
able to.
numerology and energy? Because the cycles are usually 9 years and then you start again in the 10th year is a 1 year, right? And so I don't know if you know how to figure out your year and your number. So you look at the date of your birthday and month and you add it to the year we're in, like we're in 2023. So you go 2 + 2 + 3, it's a 7 year. So this year is a 7 year. And so
Okay.
my birthday's April 26th. So 2 + 6 is 8. So I got that right. 2 + 6 is 8 plus a 4 is 12. So it's like I don't if I've added it correctly, but it's generally if you add 7 to my birthday, not the year, just a month and the day, it adds up to 9. It adds up to 1 right now, 10 and then a 1. So I'm actually starting anew. And last year was a 9 year. So it was all kind of everything coming together and closing. So if you look at some of the patterns, you
Oh,
might
that's interesting. So based on what you said, then I'm in a 9 year.
you're in a 9 year, so you're closing.
Yeah. So it's like right on. That's
And then
bizarre.
some people say, does the year start in January or on your birthday? I kind of find it starts with my birthday, but if you're born in November, then you had to wait from the beginning of January all the way to November. So, but it's just that kind of cycles. We cycle through nines or tens, because then we start again in the 10th year as a 1. So that's kind of cool that you've gone through all that. So the quote I was saying too that I really loved is you talk a lot in the book about there's people who travel and people who want to travel but don't. And to me, that's like a huge metaphor for life. And there's a writer named Bonnie Ware who was I don't know if you've heard about her before. She's a palliative care nurse, and she interviewed like 800 patients at the end of life and asked them what their biggest regrets were. And she wrote a book about it, the 5 biggest regrets. And the first one is, I wish I had the courage to live the life I knew I was meant to live. And that to me ties exactly with what you're saying. The number one regret is I wish I traveled, but I never did, or I didn't do the traveling in a real sense, but in a metaphorical too, adventuring, going out, meeting people, pushing yourself out with work, pushing yourself out in writing and so forth. So can you talk any more about that idea of the people who travel and the people who want to and don't?
Yeah, and just like the book that it's symbolic too, right? It's like legit. There's people like I'll never forget when I was like really focused on traveling and I would come home like, oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky you're traveling. And I
Lucky,
just thought to myself, like,
lucky.
I'm not lucky. It's just what I chose to focus on. Like I would work and then I would travel and I would work and I would go travel. I wasn't buying like a bunch of new clothes and a bunch of new shoes and I wasn't going out and drinking alcohol. Like I was focused that that's what I wanted to do. And so that's
Yeah,
where I put my value in our world is our money. So I put my
yeah,
money there because that's what I wanted to do. So this idea where, so many people will look outside of themselves at other people like, oh, look what that new car, look at their family, or they're so lucky, or they're so happy, and blah, blah, blah. First of all, it's all surface anyway that you're seeing. You're only seeing what people are, showing the outside world. You don't really know what's going on in their life.
mhm,
That's one thing. But the second thing is when you feel that energy towards something that somebody else is doing, instead of, judging or being upset, first of all, be happy for them.
mhm,
Where's that energy? Like
mhm.
to feel happy for somebody else that they're succeeding or that they're growing at some area of their life. But then if it sparks something in you, then maybe it's something that you desire. That's why you're looking at it. And maybe jealousy is coming up, but jealousy is just information. It's like what maybe there's something there that you actually want.
Mhm.
But do you want it? Do you actually want it? It's like let's classic. You see somebody on Instagram, they have a beautiful body, and you're like, oh, look at that. I wish I had a body like that. Do you?
Yeah,
Yeah, you want to work out every single day and you want to push your body to that limit. You want to eat certain foods. You want to make sure that you like, do you want that? No, I don't want to do all that. Okay, then you don't
yes,
really want it. So
yes.
like having that clarity is like, what do you want in life and making it happen for yourself?
Mhm.
God, like if I was on my deathbed with that regret, I wish I would have lived the life that I knew I could live. I mean, that right there feels
Yeah, yeah.
like a nightmare.
Is that true?
And
Yeah.
so if you want to learn Spanish, why aren't you learning Spanish? If
Mhm.
you want to learn to play guitar, why aren't you learning to play guitar? If you want to travel somewhere, you know what? Maybe you don't have the money right now, but why don't you start making a fund and you put X amount of money every month or every week that goes towards that trip? And it might not be tomorrow, but it could be within an X time of frame that you can get to see that place. Like it's just these things that we're not making a priority.
Mhm.
We
I
all have
think
the same day.
yeah,
We
exactly.
never know if we're going to have a tomorrow. And I think that so often we get caught up with the go, 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 or caught up with everybody else's urgency that we don't actually check in to say, like, what do I want? What do I truly desire? And what can I do today? That's just one step towards that.
That's perfect. I actually heard that comment from my guides today as I checked in meditation. Just keep reminding me, what is it that you actually want on any of the topics, whether it be a relationship, whether it be your health and wellness, whether it be your work or your finances. It's like, so forget about like all the how. What is it that you want to create? And just be really clear on that. And it may be just the emotion. If it's finance, can I feel free? If it's work, can I feel more fulfilled? If it's a relationship, feel more supported? How your health, maybe it's just feeling more energy and radiance, and just focus on that. And then exactly what you said, just that one step, because then we get overwhelmed. We got all these things like, what's that one step I can do each day, even if it takes me 5 minutes to do it? Can I do it? And it's such a shame when so many people are not doing the traveling, so to speak, and sometimes you'll do it in one part of your life, but other part you don't. I have so many people saying to me, same thing, you're really lucky to be an entrepreneur. I couldn't have done that. Well, I was like, I was raising two kids on my own. I wasn't even divorced where I could have half the time here, half the time there. I'm a widow. I was totally with small kids. And it was like, the sacrifices that I made, which were sacrifices maybe to a certain level of comfort and um, feeling of security, let's say. I gave that up because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be an entrepreneur primarily for them so that when they came home from school, I would be there and I had the flexibility with them. But also for me, I wanted the freedom to be able to express my gifts and creativity in a way. And so it like you said, there's obviously luck and fortune in the way, but you're making it as you go. and it's your priority. It's also your mindset, right? Because if you don't believe you can do it, you're not good enough. All those things get in the way of like travel. I'm afraid this, that, and the other thing. So I'll say I don't have the time or I don't have the money, but it's really some of these other things that get in the way. The work, some of the work that you do to help people on the inside remove the barriers. So
And to be an entrepreneur when you're a single mom, I love how you said I had to sacrifice security to make that happen because you wanted that
yes,
and you were probably a force of energy to make that happen for you. And that's what I think that people don't realize is when they say they want something, do they really want it?
yes,
Because anything we really want, we make it happen.
yes,
We make it happen.
yes,
Nothing, think about it. Like you set your mind on it and you just, doesn't matter what somebody says, what somebody does, you're just going to force through.
yeah,
But I think one of the biggest problems is that more than 80% of people don't know what they want.
yes,
Like that
yes,
still blows my
yes,
mind. More than 80% of people don't know what they want. And then you have 20% that maybe they don't know how and they still don't get what they want, even if they know what they want. Like it's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
We
And
have
we
one,
hear, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we only have this one life.
Yes.
That's
Mhm.
it. I don't care if you believe in past lives. Like I will only be Laura Louise
Yeah.
Persichetti once.
Mhm.
One shot.
Exactly. Yeah. So and make that the best. But exactly, people don't even realize. I often will catch them because they'll say, "Well, I'd like to do this, but it depends if this happened. It depends if that happens," and it just goes on and on. It's like they're a paper cup in the wind without without that clarity of I want this. I don't care if I'm going to be disappointed if I can't get it. I don't care if it makes me look dumb. I'm not care about. I want this, but they let all those other fears cloud that they don't even know what they want because of all the fears, the judgments, all those kind of things. So they're not used to really getting into that clarity.
Yeah, they're using the power of the mind to look for reasons why not to
Not
versus the power of the mind to look for reasons to do it. I mean, you run retreats, right? You were just saying before this call that you're doing a retreat in Portugal. And I'm sure you see it all the time where people are like, oh, I would love to do that. I would love so much to go on that retreat. It's like, okay, make it happen for
yeah.
yourself.
Yes,
You
exactly.
have this beautiful opportunity to go with a group of people to have an experience where you don't necessarily have to know everything that's planned because somebody else is doing that for you. So it's a safe trip. And then you can go to see somewhere new and explore this incredible new place that maybe you've always wanted to go, or maybe just always wanted to try something new.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, what about this? And what about this? What about this? What about this? It's like, okay, so you mentioned luck and fortune, right? I really believe that when you take a step towards something that you want, that's when life will support it.
Yeah.
Life's not going to support it before you take your step.
Yes.
We
Yes.
have to take that blind step first,
Hmm.
some sort of action says, I'm committed to this, I'm doing this as some sort of decision that puts your will forward, like I'm here, this is what I want, and then the universe will support that next step.
I love that, and it's so, so true, and the opposite is so true too. So, which makes sense. So, with retreats as an example, when people sign up and we ask them to put a deposit, they often will say, "My life started changing then." We'll ask them to watch for that because it could be 6 months ahead of time, but they've made that step. Conversely, and that's a lot of why we often ask for deposits and so forth, people are spinning. They have their great idea, they love it, but they haven't made the step. And then a week goes by and 2 weeks go by, and they're less and less likely to because they haven't made the step and they found all their reasons why not. And those why nots have kept them down where they are. It's really
Yep.
amazing when we watch that.
Oh, it's that, and that indecision can create so much turmoil
Yeah.
versus just decide to do it, put down the deposit and watch the magic happen.
Mhm.
But you're like, oh, maybe I'll do it, and you just spin for weeks. But it's better to make a decision to say no than it is to be like in a space of like, uh,
Yes, exactly, exactly. That's very true. So, before we close off, I'd love to ask you a little bit more about the Camino Trail that you went on, which is, I guess, a spiritual journey. It's for those, maybe you can explain what it is, because for those who haven't heard of it before, it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I hope to be able to do it in the near future. And my son is doing it this year by himself. So I'm excited about that. But just about kind of maybe your why and your overarching kind of experience from that.
So it's called the Camino de Santiago, and it's a walk that traditionally begins south of France, goes across Spain to Santiago, which is a city in Spain. And the walk traditionally was, I mean, usually it was people who had done some sort of crime. They would do this walk as like a penance.
Okay.
But there was also a spiritual component to it where, miracles and healings would take place on that walk. There would be, you know, different spiritual connections that would occur by taking this walk. Now, today, I think there's a mix of people who take it for a spiritual purpose. Some people take it because they think, oh, it's a cool travel experience. Some people take it because it's on their bucket list of something they read somewhere and they're like, oh, this sounds like a great idea. So I was booking a trip to go to Europe and I met with a friend of mine and she was actually one of my mom's age, but I was just friends with her over the years. Her son and I went to school together, and over the years she just kind of became um, just one of my people. And so I was telling her that I was going to Europe, and I was saying I was going to go to Spain. She's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to do the Camino de Santiago." I'm like, "What's that?" And she described what it was and told me what it was. I was like, "Oh, I need to do that." Like that. Like I didn't do that. So I um I decided to start with the Camino and then travel other parts of Europe. And one thing I highly recommend is so I had everything in one bag and I was like, okay, what do I bring for the Camino? What do I bring for this trip? And it was all in a backpack. I highly recommend if you are going to do this walk, you bring just what you need for the walk. And if you're going to be traveling after, like leave a suitcase somewhere that you pick up later because it was a hard
Crazy.
first lesson walking up the Pyrenees the first day and just having this backpack just of luggage and crap that I probably did not need. And as I continued walking, just peeling back these layers, mentally,
That's one
emotionally,
of
but
your
even
chapters in
physically.
your book, right? About the luggage. I love it.
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
yeah. And so just bringing a bunch of stuff that I really didn't need and letting stuff go and facing my attachments,
That's the key,
recognizing
right? Yeah.
what I thought was important actually wasn't important.
Hmm.
I had a really hard experience that I write in the book about is I just thought, I don't need anything. The only thing I need is my journal. My journal is the most important thing. And I had my journal at one albergue, which is called a pilgrim hostel, which is usually the places you stay along the way. And we walked 40 kilometers that day. I got to the next pilgrimage and I went to go for my journal and realized I left it under the pillow of the last one. I had a meltdown. I like went straight to the staff and asked if they could call the one and weren't getting a hold of anybody. She's like, you could take a taxi, but it was going to be 40 euro to drive there, 40 euro to come back. Like it was just like, should I do that? And I was with a friend at the time and he was like, honestly, Laura, for a journal. And I was so frustrated and flustered. I ended up going for a walk, which is ironic because I spent the whole day walking. I just need to go for a walk to kind of level out my emotions and let it go. And I
Yeah.
realized that it wasn't the most important thing. And I found peace with the idea maybe someone's gonna find it. And one, I had postcards in there with addresses on. I was like, maybe they'll send it to my house, which never happened. But two, maybe someone was gonna find it and read it and for some way get inspired. But I had to like truly let go of that attachment. And that's one
So that's the
of
universe,
so
eh?
many
It's
lessons.
teaching you about attachment. You'd gone through like layers of it, right? Getting rid of stuff, and this last one that was so important. And that's how funny universe is, right? You think you've just learned the lesson, and then it's like, wait, we got another one, a little harder one,
A little bit
right?
deeper, a little bit deeper, a little
Yeah,
bit deeper.
exactly. Exactly. Sorry. So continue about the Camino. So that was the
Oh,
beginning.
I was just saying that was one of many, many, many lessons on that trip. And also, it's like a walking onion and the layers just get peeled off all
I
along the
love
way.
that.
I'll
Walking.
never forget and a walking onion.
I
Yeah, and
love
I'll never forget the one day I was walking and I realized I wasn't thinking. And I was like, oh, I think I've thought about everything I could possibly think about. And it was just this emptiness. And
Wow.
it wasn't because I meditated or because I did some sort of practice. It was literally an emptiness.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the peacefulness that that was.
Mm.
And that I wasn't doing anything in particular to make that happen, that it literally just happened. And then I laughed thinking like, did I really think about everything there is to possibly think about? I outthought myself.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And then, so again, I don't know if everyone knows, but it's like a full month of walking 25 to 30, 40K a day, right? About 800 kilometers or more.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's quite grueling on physically, emotionally, mentally, and then all the, where you stay must be challenging. And anything else to share with the audience about that?
Yeah, you never know where you're gonna end up. I mean, I should say I never knew where I was gonna end. We never did any research. We would just walk to the next place and then find the next albergue. We never planned ahead or like, okay, we're gonna go from this city to this city. We'll stay at this particular place. We did not do any of that, which I love the way that we did it. And we had no technology, never even called home, nothing. The
Wow.
only thing I did was wrote postcards and I just shut off from
Wow.
any technology, which was really freeing. And there were some places that were so beautiful and so just like, this is just the best. This is just exactly what I needed to end the day. And then there are other places that were very like cold or basic. I'll never forget the one night we were, some rooms you were by yourself, some rooms where you're shared with a big group of people or just a few people, bunk beds typically. And the one night it was like a symphony of people who were snoring. Thankfully I could sleep through it, but my friend was yeah, he was,
Oh,
and sometimes when you kind of walk to the next city, the next city, and like sometimes you get into these phases of people. Um, and he was like, we have to walk to the even the next city because I can't share space with the group of people who are so
the snorers, the snorer space. I love it. Oh my God.
so it's
And
not perfect, that's for sure.
no. And what was it like at the end for you? The last days,
Um,
last day or day when you got there?
so getting to Santiago is beautiful, and you go to it's like there's this point where you can see it. You're still far away, but you can see the city. And that feels like you've won. Even though you're not there yet, the fact that you can see that you're almost there is just brings so much hope and uplifting energy. And then walking into the city and going into the church and just being in that space that was like the destination. But honestly, I recommend if anybody does the walk to actually walk to Finisterre, which is there's Santiago and then Finisterre, which is known as the end of the world. And that was one of my favorite parts of the whole trip because you're walking through kind of forest trail, and then the forest opens up, and you see the ocean.
Is
And
that
it's just
beyond
this,
Santiago or is that
yeah, it's another, I think 3 days after
okay?
reaching Santiago.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Oh, that's great. And so you're feeling at the end, the days after, whatever, looking back, what was your, whew, how did you feel? What was it like?
One, I felt empty. I felt kind of like, now what? I felt like I wanted to still walk.
Mm,
Um, I didn't feel like I was done. But there was also this sense of like rejoice. I had this headband that you can wrap it around your wrist, or you can wrap it around like a headband, or you can open it up and you can use it as a turtleneck, like one of those, I can't remember what they're called. But I had it with me the whole trip. And then in Finisterre, one of the traditions is to burn something at the sunset. And so that's what I burned.
mm.
And I just like watching that flame away, recognizing that that was holding like everything that I had in my mind the whole time. And the sunset was the best sunset I've ever seen in my whole life. It was literally just sun and ocean. There was nothing else to see.
Wow. Wow.
Um,
Amazing.
so I don't know if it was a sense of accomplishment. It was more a sense of fulfillment.
Hmm. Hmm. Beautiful. Well, that's great. Such great wisdom, ideas, thoughts. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us. And if maybe the best way for people to connect with you is your website, would that be the best way?
Yeah, royalartshealingacademy.com.
Okay, that's great. And I'll put it in the link as well. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we get off?
Yeah, I mean, you can jump on any of the socials too, like lauralouise.ca is my Instagram. It's also another one of my websites. I have an app that has some courses on there, or just not just courses, but um, uh,
Tools?
I'm trying to think tools. Yes, tools, practices, and it exposes you to practices and then also provides a tracking service so you can track, okay, if I meditated today, how long did I meditate? But you can also track your stress levels and your mood to be able to see, okay, while I'm doing these tools, how does it help my stress levels? How does it help my mood? And that's on both Android and Apple. So you can go to the App Store and it's called Royal Member. And right now I'm doing free access to it because I'm just want people to test it out and let me know how it is. If there's anything that you're want to see more of, now is the time to express it because it's in the birthing stages, which is a
That's
lot of
great.
fun.
So it's Royal member, so it's like the Royal Academy of Healing Arts, that kind of thing. That connects to that. That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have another conversation. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And the Camino goes through Portugal as well. So maybe
I
you do your retreat and then you do one of the mini walks. That would be kind of cool. That's on my bucket list is the Portugal walk.
You know what? I actually was like with this about to there was like a program that was going to help bring people like me where they carry your backpack. I was going to have someone else carry my backpack and do the walk and do the short one.
Good call.
I was just about to hit enter and pay, and New Year's Eve was like the cutoff date. And I phoned my friend who I'm doing the Portugal retreat with, and I said, "Are you okay? I'm going to go and do that on my own. You're going to do your own thing." And she said, "Oh yeah, no problem. I'm thinking of this thing in France." I said, "What?" And she said, "Oh, I'm going to do a retreat, and it's all about the Mary Magdalene way and the Hathors, and it's a deep, deep spiritual retreat." And I was like, so I gave up on the Camino and went to this one. But so I'm regretting a bit the Camino part, but I'm really excited about the France one. So and we'll do other retreats in Europe. So we'll go back, but that's going to be for me probably do the small mini one, and have staying at nice places and having somebody carry my
Yeah,
backpack. The walk and
that's
everything will be
beautiful.
good for me. So yeah, that's great.
Good
But
for
anyways,
you.
thanks so much. But and for the inspiration and all the work that you do, it's just awesome and so needed right now.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be staying in touch. And yeah, thanks for this opportunity to share. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, great.